Seton, what kind of poll question do you have for me?
We got a couple more off the Deshaun Watson ruling.
All right.
We could go with Judge Sue L. Robinson handled the Deshaun Watson case appropriately or got it wrong.
Here's the problem. I think a lot of people don't like the end result, the verdict. But if you read the 15 pages, you see how she came to this conclusion. Now, I don't like it. I think he should have gotten more. But her job is to enforce policy. And she even says that. Hey, look, I'm just taking sort of samples of what you've done before with other players. Ben Roethlisberger, Ezekiel Elliott. These are all policies. These are all punishments. So she's sort of following the guidelines there. Now, she did have some language where, nonviolent sexual assault. It's still sexual assault. But she says nonviolent sexual assault. But she does lay out her case. Do I think he deserved more? Because I think he's a creep. I think he's, there's a predatorial behavior here. Do I think there's bigger issues here? Yes, I do. But she was going by the guidelines that she was given. And the NFL did prove its case. She even said that. But if you go first, second, third, that's how it's laid out. In 3 sections here, she says the NFL proved its case. But also the NFL, it felt like, is its own worst enemy here because of prior punishments that they handed out. Would I like to see more for Deshaun Watson? Yes. Here's another thing, and a source who's involved in this I said, what's the commissioner do? And my source said, my source said that he didn't think the commissioner was going to hear the case, but he would have somebody else hear the case, which is kind of tricky there. Maybe that's deniability. But also, if you have this new agreement with the Players Association and the NFL, you bring in a judge, an independent judge, and then all of a sudden, the first time you bring her in, you go, no, we don't like what you said. Now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna give him a season. So you've already taken away the importance of this judge. That's another thing that you have to factor in. I think the perception is important here. I think what's happened over the last 24 hours and how the media has covered this, the NFL is just surveying. They're surveying the situation. What's the temperature? Are people demonstrably angry with this? Like, is there a real anger here? Because here's the other thing. Let's say they suspend him for a year and Deshaun Watson's team decides to sue. What about a temporary restraining order and Deshaun Watson plays week 1 against the Carolina Panthers and Baker Mayfield? That's the possibility. But the NFL Players Association has not challenged anything. They were fine with 6-game suspension. So they didn't even fight for him to be innocent. They know he's guilty. It's like, hey, what's the worst case scenario? 6 games. All right. Let's take it. Now, she did label Deshaun Watson a first-time offender. Now, according to the NFL policy, he's a first-time offender. My issue is he's a first-time offender with that woman. And then he's a second-time offender with that woman. And then he's a third-time offender with that woman. Zeke Elliott was with one woman. Ben Roethlisberger, one woman. 6 games. Deshaun Watson's case, there were 4 women. That's what was presented. Now, we know there were a lot more women, but the judge only looked at the 4 cases. But I'd still argue that's first-time offender, second-time offender, third-time offender, fourth-time offender. Fourth-time offender, I'm sitting you down for the season. That would be the approach that I would want to have with a situation like this. But I do understand what she's saying, what she was factoring in, and how she came to her decision. I understand it. Don't like it. I think the NFL has had such a problem trying to adjudicate. that they get involved in this stuff. I go back to the Ray Rice situation. 2 games, and that's it. And then all of a sudden the video came out, and everybody's like, did you factor in there could be video? And then to have Ray Rice with his girlfriend at the time sit together in a room and talk about this goes against logic in a case like this, domestic violence. You have them separate. She might be intimidated to say something in front of him. But the NFL has fumbled this before, which leads us to where we are today. All she's doing is going on what has happened before. Like, she didn't want to be the one that says, nope, I'm going to change the policy here. She said, the NFL, you guys have to change your own policy. I'm only enforcing what you guys have decided, what you've done before. And that's where it gets tricky, because we may not like the end result, but we have to look at how she got to the end result. But I don't know if Roger Goodell, it feels like he will have to designate somebody for the appeal than himself. Now, you might say, didn't he already designate somebody? Yeah, the judge. But he might have to bring somebody in from the bullpen, and then he could step back and say, hey, this is the person. I mean, it's semantics here. A couple of people have weighed in on this. Does the commissioner hear the case himself? You don't want to look at the process and say it's rigged. But if the commissioner hears the case, how much credibility does he lose from the standpoint of having this judge hear this? I mean, this is what you had a collective bargaining agreement so you could have this. And then it turns out that it's really a sham that the commissioner is still judge, jury, and executioner. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. I don't like the end result. Also, did you see where certain guidelines for Deshaun Watson? He's allowed to get massages from the Cleveland Browns. How do you think you'd feel if you're one of the massage therapists for the Cleveland Browns? Like, oh, great. But he can get a massage through the team, but not outside of that. Who's going to know if he's getting one outside of that? So there's a lot of things that are still in motion 24 hours after the fact.